This video is brought to you by Skillshare.
I've got a ton of gravel in my shoes, world on my shoulder, heart full of blues. I'm in the dirt, down in the dirt.
What's up guys, really excited to make this video. It's been a long time coming. If you remember, about 2 years ago, I made a video on how to solve a 2x2 Rubik's Cube blindfolded. Now we're gonna up the ante and do it with a 3x3 blindfolded. Just a side note, you do not need any previous experience solving one of these. In fact, I'm going to assume that you have never solved one of these in your life, and I'm gonna teach you how to do it without looking. Yeah, it's not as hard as you think. The memory part of it is actually not too hard. And with my help and expertise, I can make it a lot easier. And it's one of those things that if you can do it, it's impressive as hell. I mean, people get impressed when you can just solve a Rubik's Cube looking at it and take a few minutes. Imagine if you could do the memorization of a Rubik's Cube and solve it in just a few minutes. Anyways, let's start with the basics. Let's go. First of all, the first thing you got to notice about a Rubik's Cube, and if you're experienced with a Rubik's Cube, please fast forward, is that there are three kinds of pieces. There are the center pieces, which are the ones in the middle, and they are essentially just one sticker. They don't move, they stay right there in the middle on the face that they are. Then you have edges, which are basically combinations of two stickers. And then finally you have the corner pieces, which are a combination of three stickers. So this technique is all about how to memorize the sequence in which we place the edges correctly and then the corners correctly. That's it. We don't have to memorize centers because they don't move. There's nothing to memorize. In terms of how you can turn the cube, there's a special notation that we use to write out a series of moves. This is called an algorithm. For this tutorial, I recommend having the white face up and the green face towards you. You don't have to go that way, but it'll mirror what I'm doing this whole video, so why not do that? And that's what I do anyways. So for notation, we have 6 faces, so we have 6 different letters for our algorithm notation. This is gonna be U for up, this is gonna be D for down, F for front because it's facing you, this is gonna be B for back because it's facing the back, R for right, your right, and then this is gonna be L for your left. When I say U, it means turn the face that I'm talking about, which would be this one, clockwise. If I say U prime with a little dash next to it, it means go counterclockwise, which means that way. If at any point in my algorithm or an algorithm that I show you, you see a letter squared, that basically means turn it twice. And in that case, it doesn't matter if you do it clockwise or counterclockwise because you end up in the same spot. Now, solving a Rubik's Cube blindfolded, at least with the method that I'm going to show you, which is called Old Pochmann Method. The way it works is you have to memorize a sequence of pieces, okay? So there's a little bit of memory there. And you're gonna use 2, and sometimes 1 extra one for parity, algorithms to solve the whole thing. Usually when you learn how to solve a Rubik's Cube, just generally, you need to memorize a bunch of algorithms. For this one, you just need to memorize 3, and you're gonna use 2 of them 90% of the time. All right, so the algorithms you need to know, one is called the T-perm, okay, which basically stands for T-permutation. It actually swaps 2 corners and 2 edges at the same time. And we're gonna do a series of T-perms for solving all the edges, and then we're gonna use another algorithm, which is a variation of a Y-perm, to solve all the corners, okay? And the process goes like this. You're gonna have a scrambled cube, you pick it up, and you're gonna look at the corners. You're gonna memorize a sequence that will help you solve the corners. Then you're gonna look at the edges and figure out a sequence that will help you remember how to solve the edges. You're gonna put the blindfold on, and then you're gonna solve the edges, and then you're gonna solve the corners. So it goes memo of corners, memo of edges, solve edges, solve corners. So the T-perm goes like this. And notice that it swapped these two corners and swapped those two edges. Let's do that one more time. That. And then the Y-perm is and notice that it swapped these two pieces here and these two pieces here. Kind of makes a weird Y shape. We'll cover that third algorithm in a little bit because it only applies to certain cases. The majority of the times you're just going to use those two algorithms to solve everything. Let's talk a little bit about how to memorize the cube. Like, how does this work? It seems like there's so many combinations. How could you possibly memorize anything in advance? But it's actually pretty simple, and it's pretty clever too. So let's start with the edges, okay? So we have this T-perm, right? And I said that in terms of edges at least, the T-perm swaps two edges, always the same ones. So the goal is to memorize a sequence, and if I can bring the edge that I'm trying to place a piece into to this swap zone, then apply the algorithm, it'll swap it to what we call this buffer zone and kind of keep it there. And then if I place the actual edge that I want to hold that piece and then swap it again, it's gonna go to that spot, right? As long as I put it back. Same kind of idea applies for the corners, except we use a different buffer zone and a different swap zone. For the corners, this top one right here is gonna be the buffer zone, and then this piece sticker down here is gonna be the swap zone. If you're still confused, don't worry. I like to learn by doing examples, and we'll do some of those in just a moment. To do that though, we do need what's called a lettering scheme. Some means to identify all the stickers on the cube. So the way we do that is with an alphabetic lettering system. Let's do corners first. Starting on the top face, it's A, B, C, D. You're going clockwise. Then we go to the left face, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P on the back, Q, R, S, T, and then on the bottom, U, V, W, X. And then for the edges, it's the same lettering scheme, just the edge pieces. So A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, Q, R, S, T, and then U, V, W, X. So now we can refer to any corner, any edge, and know exactly which one we're talking about based on these lettering schemes. All right, let's start with a very simple few cases. So you're gonna have a bunch of jumbled edges, and when you look at the cube, you're gonna look at the buffer zone. This is this piece right here. We call that upper right, up right, okay? And the swap zone is upper left. But I'm gonna look at the piece that is in the upper right when I'm looking at the Scramble cube and say, what is the letter of where that sticker is supposed to go? Okay, so if it's supposed to go to L, then I memorize L. And then I look at L, and there's gonna be a piece there that should be there, and that's gotta go somewhere else, right? So I gotta memorize where that piece goes, the letter. Let's say it goes to N. So now I have LN. And you carry on with that procedure, stringing together a bunch of letters that will help you memorize the sequence of swaps. So let's just say that that was my first thing, LN. So this is what that would look like. So I'm looking at the buffer, this is mostly solved, but if I were to look at this and say, okay, this buffer zone needs to go to L, and then this piece needs to go to N. Okay, so I memorize LN. Now what do I do? Okay, well, when I start memorizing, my first letter is L, so I gotta put L, the L piece, in the swap zone. Because that's the only, my algorithm only swaps those two. It doesn't swap to L, it swaps to this upper left piece. So I gotta put the L there, swap it, and then make sure I replace it back. The only thing you gotta be aware of when you're setting up these moves is that you don't disturb the buffer zone. Okay, so you can't move anything that will disturb these top three stickers. To put L up there, that's actually not too bad. I just gotta turn it up one. And yes, you messed up other stuff, but as long as you do the algorithm and return it back the same way, nothing else will be disturbed. So I put L up top, and now I do my T-perm. and put it back. And now you'll notice that L is back where it should be. Then our next letter was N, right? So N is this sticker over here. I gotta bring it to this swap zone. Now, at first, it's gonna be a bit tricky to understand how to do that without bugging this. But if I do one kind of wide D turn counterclockwise, clockwise L, and then do it, and then undo it. So I do an L prime and then a wide D prime. And then the cube is solved. A couple things about memorization. So we did a couple examples there that were basically just 2 letters. A lot of the sequences that you'll have to memorize, let's say for the edges and the corners, will be maybe 6 to 12 letters long. Now what I do and what a lot of speed cubers do is they will pair letters together and make little words. You know from my channel, I'm all about that. So in the previous example, we had L and N. So I might have thought of, let's say, Lando Calrissian, right? Because it started with an LN sound at the beginning, Lando. So what I'll do, again, I'll pick up the cube that's scrambled and I'll look at the corners first. I start by looking at the buffer zone of the corners and say, where does that go? What is the letter piece where that should be? And then when I get to that piece, I say, where does that letter go? And so on and so on. And as I'm doing that, I'm creating these pairs of letters and making little words and picturing them and connecting them into some kind of linked list. So if the first one was Lando Calrissian and the next one was like, I don't know, G and M, maybe I thought of gum. So I think of Lando Calrissian chewing some gum. And that will tell me that it was LNGM, and so on and so on. You can also use a memory palace. It's a bit of a waste of space because you don't really need that much and it's so quick anyways, maybe it's not even necessary, but if you feel better about storing Lando Calrissian chewing some gum in the first location of your memory palace, that's totally fine. Once I'm done memorizing the sequence for the corners, I'll then look and do the same thing with the edges. And so I'll start by looking at the buffer zone of the edges, which is here, and say to myself, what is the letter piece of where that should go, and kind of continue the sequence on from there, creating new words, maybe putting in a memory palace, and then that's it. I do the edges first, setting up each letter, doing the algorithm, the T-perm, until I've completed all the edges. Then I do the same for the corners. Now there is one thing you have to be careful of, which is called parity. If your sequence of letters, and you'll know this as soon as you memorize the corners, if it's odd, meaning you have all pairs and then one extra letter, then you have to have an odd amount for the edges as well. If you have odd and even, then you've messed up. If one is even, then the other one should be even. If one's odd, the other should be odd. Now, if it's odd, once you've solved the edges and you're about to do the last step, which is to solve the corners, you have to do one more algorithm. So the algorithm is basically an Y-perm, and it goes like this. So 3 algorithms, seriously, that's it. That's all you gotta memorize. And then you can start doing this. And now here's a video of me solving Rubik's Cube blindfolded while I tell you about the sponsor for today's video, Skillshare. Skillshare is an online learning community for creatives where millions come together to take the next step in their creative journey. Skillshare offers thousands of inspiring classes for creative and curious people on topics including illustration, design, photography, video, freelancing, and more. Literally, Skillshare has anything, and I've actually used some of the classes already. I'm a big fan of Skillshare. I've used a lot of their classes. Some of my favorites are by Thomas Frank, who's another YouTuber about building habits, productivity, all that jazz, and also Ali Abdaal, who I've been on his show before. He has some great productivity videos as well, and how to use Anki, some memory-related stuff in there. Also, and in relation to Rubik's Cube learning, you can check out Mike Boyd's Skillshare class on how to solve a Rubik's Cube. But to be honest, after you've learned how to do it blindfolded, why do it with your eyes open? Who is Skillshare for? Anybody. Creative and curious people, lifelong learners, real working creatives, beginners, pros, dabblers, and well, there we go, I'm done. The nice thing about Skillshare is you can go at your own pace, you can sign up for any classes that you like. Members get unlimited access to thousands of inspiring classes with hands-on projects and feedback from a community of millions. So So what are you waiting for? Sign up today. The first 1,000 people who click the link in my description will get a free trial of Skillshare Premium. Anyways, back to the video. I'm gonna go through this and figure out what the sequence is that we have to memorize, how I would memorize it, and then how we would solve it, okay? So the first thing I do when I pick it up is I make sure that I know where my top and front is. Remember I said white is always on top and then green is always facing me. That way I never lose that orientation. Obviously you don't want to spin the cube when you're blindfolded because then you're going to lose where you are. You always want to make sure that you don't change how you hold it. All right, so I'm going to do corners first. So I look in the buffer zone here and I say, where does that go? Okay, that's the white, green, red piece that should go here, right? Which is what letter? A, B, C. So I memorize C. Then I ask myself, where does this piece go? Where does this sticker go? Which is the red, green, yellow, right? This is the red face with the green and the yellow. So that red piece should go here, which is the letter P, right? M-N-O-P. So I have CP. Okay, so I might picture like a cap. Okay, that's in my mind right now. Then I ask, where does this go? This goes to the red here with the blue and yellow. So that's O. Then I go to this piece goes to up here on the red face with the blue and the white. That's N. So I have cap on. On just happens to be a word. So I'm going to imagine someone putting a cap on. And then where does the N go? This goes to D over here. And then where does this go? This goes to actually down here, X. And notice that this is my buffer piece. So I know, well, I think that I'm done, right? As I'm doing this, I usually will have my fingers holding onto all the pieces I've touched. And if I did that, I would be these four. And then notice that I missed this one, but it's solved. That's where it should be. So I'm actually good. I'm done. Okay, so I had cap on and then DX. All right, so now we're gonna do the edges and we start with the buffer zone and say, okay, where does this piece go? And look, this is actually in the right place. Yes, it's flipped, right? The red should be here, but this is the buffer zone. We don't put things in the buffer zone that go in the buffer zone. So what was the rule if the buffer zone piece was already there? We just choose another piece. Any one that's unsolved. Obviously you wouldn't want to choose this one because that one's actually solved. But let's maybe choose J, J. Okay, so I'm going to start with this letter. Next question is, where does J go? That's the edge of the orange and the yellow, right? Which should go here, right? And it's the yellow piece specifically. So that's UVWX. So I have JX. I'm going to think of Jax. And then where does this piece go? That's the yellow red, which is here. That's V. Okay, and where does this white blue piece go? That goes up here, which is A. Okay, so I have Jacksonville and VA. I'm gonna imagine Jacksonville Jaguars playing in Virginia for whatever reason. And then where does the A piece go here? That's blue and orange, which that's here, that's QR. Okay, so I have R, okay, and then this red-green piece, the red needs to go here, which is MNOP. So I have RP. And then notice that I've now returned back to that J. I know it's not the letter J, but it's that same piece, right? So when I come back to the same piece that I've already used, doesn't matter what sticker, then my cycle is done. So I usually will trace with my fingers just to make sure, because I had Jax, VA, Virginia, and then RP, which RP makes me think of like a rep. So I have the Jacksonville Jaguars playing in Virginia and doing one rep. Okay, but is that it? So let's just make sure. I had J, I'm gonna put my finger here, X, I'm gonna put my finger there, V, sometimes it gets a bit awkward, A, R, and then P back here. So looking at my other edges, most of them are solved, right? This one's solved, this one's solved, this one's solved, and this one's solved. So that was actually a pretty easy one. So that's it. Jax, Virginia, RP. Okay, and it was even, just like my corners were, so I know I'm good. All right, so next step is to solve the edges. And then when I'm done with that, solve the corners. Okay, so I have Jax, J, X, V, A, R, P. I'm gonna start with J, which means I put my J piece up here, and then I do my swap algorithm. Okay, how do I put J up there without messing up these three, right? Because it might be tempting to say, oh, let me put it on the bottom and then move it around here and then put it on top here. No, because then you've messed up these guys, which is where the buffer zone is. You don't want to do that. So I could do this. I could move this layer and then pull that piece up here. And now it's in the correct swap position. I do the algorithm. And I undo what I did before. Now, this didn't really help because nothing's really solved yet, but that was because the buffer zone piece was in its own place. We just chose a letter to start it with, so it doesn't really solve anything just yet. Now here's where the magic will happen. Our next letter was X, which is here. That one's an easy one. We can just rotate it twice to put it on top, and then we do the algorithm again. And notice that it swapped those. I put it on the bottom, or undo the setup move, and notice that it's now in the correct spot. Okay, then we do V, which is here. I want to put it up here, so I'm going to rotate it and put it on top. There it is. Do the algorithm again. And now it's swapped them, right? But I have to undo what I did, which is put it back on the bottom and then rotate it twice. And now look, this red one is now in its spot. Okay, that's V. Now we do A, which is this letter here. That's a tricky one, but I'm gonna rotate it twice, so it's here, rotate it over, and then put it up. Now there it is. Do the algorithm. And now you wanna make sure that you do it the same way. So put it on the bottom, bring it here, and then I did twice there. And now the A is correct. Okay, now we do R, Q, R. That one's an easy one, just bring it up here. Notice that it's correct now. And then finally P, which is M-N-O-P. So I can do this and this, and now the algorithm. And then put it back. And notice just by doing all those letters, it actually filled in that buffer piece at the very end. That's how this magic works. Okay, now we've done the edges. Now we're gonna move on to the corner. What did we have? Cap on DX. Okay, so I start with C, which is ABC, this letter. I gotta put it in the swap zone without messing up these three pieces here. So I can do this, right? And there it is. Now I do my algorithm. Okay, and I put it back. Now it's where it should be, right? Then we do P, which is already in the swap zone, so I just do the algorithm. Okay, that's solved. Now we do O, M-N-O, that's this piece, so I'm gonna rotate it once, then do the algorithm, put it back. That's good, right? Now we do N, which is this piece, M-N. Rotate it twice to get it here. I haven't touched these by doing that, so do the algorithm. And then rotate it twice back to N, and that's good. Finally, we have D and X. So A, B, C, D, this piece, I gotta put it here. So I could do this. That works, right? And then the algorithm. Put it back. Okay. And now finally the X, which is UVWX. So I can rotate it once and then bring it here, and now it's in that right sticker zone, and do the algorithm one more time and undo it by putting it down here and back there. Now, some of you may be satisfied with that one example. Some of you may want a lot more examples because there are a lot of, well, what if this happens and what if this happens? And frankly, some of you, like myself, may need more examples to really capture this. So instead of going on for another 20 minutes in this video, I'm gonna make a separate video that is purely just examples. It'll be unlisted. You can only access it in the description. Fret not, I want you guys to get this. But at least with that example, if you could follow along and you understood everything that I said so far, you should be in good shape. Before you go to that extra video I made though, make sure you understand that example I did. Go through it, do it in slow motion, Make sure you've done it a bajillion times, and I'll have the actual algorithm to get your cube to look like that so you can actually follow along as I'm doing it in this video as well. That'll be in the description.
Also, in the other video, I'll go over some different cycles that end early and how to deal with them.
Okay, let's finish this up. All right, guys, I hope that was instructive. I hope that was really helpful. And with a little bit of practice, you can actually get that speed of memorization and solving this blindfolded under 5 minutes. And with the technique I showed you, the old Pochmann method, actually, I've heard of people doing it sub 60 seconds with it. I'm not quite there yet. I've had to do some kind of more advanced tricks and methods to get to that point. Maybe in a follow-up video sometime, I'll show you how to do the same thing, but a more advanced method, the method that I currently am using, although I'm switching to an even more complicated system. But yeah, I'd love to do a series of these videos, but you can start with this one. This will take you very far and it'll wow the pants off of anybody that you show it to for sure. Thanks for watching, guys. Hope you like this one. Please give it a little like, and if you're not subscribed, please subscribe and hit that little notification bell so that you know when I upload a new video. We got some good stuff coming up in the next few months, so I'm out.